In order to have a better language in your writing, you need to be aware of the meaning of the words that you create to have a better argument, to have a better logic behind that. To define that specific language that you create, clarity of that language is also important. So when you create some kind of a debate, some kind of argument, you need to read and see if what exactly you have in mind is communicated correctly and properly. So if you don't understand your argument, how would you expect your audience to understand that? Obviously, you need to assess, you need to revise and edit before your audience assess. The accuracy of the language is the last step of the language principle in your argument in order to have the better debate. The accuracy of the language is defined in the context of the language. So-called extreme language may indicate the author's personal bias. So if I am adding my emotion within the language that I'm creating, it's called as the extreme language, and it might create some kind of a biased opinion, because if I am only relying on my own opinion without reading other sources and doing the research, how would I know that my idea is not biased? So make sure that you don't have any fallacies, you avoid biases as well. So far, so good, no questions? Then we can continue. If you have any question, I open the chat box. More than welcome to write down your questions in the chat box. So I send the document within the chat box. Make sure that if you don't have it in the chat box, if you don't see it because you log into the session by delay a little bit, make sure you let me know. I will repost. The second most important component of the principle of the good argument is the premises and the conclusion. Premises are the reasons and pieces of evidence that you collect based on your research that you do. You do the research, you collect different pieces of evidence and to support your own opinion. In order to have the correct conclusion, you must have the accurate pieces of evidence in your writing and in your debate, in your communication. So I cannot rely on my friend's point of view about something, because if I don't know how accurate my friend's information is, how would I be able to reflect it and then take them as my own opinion and then send it to the new groups of audience? It's going to be confusing. It's going to be a weak argument. Then again, recap. In order to have a better debate, better critical analysis, you need two pieces of information: premises, enough reasoning and evidences, and in order to drive a better conclusion. Your conclusion is driven from the claim. So you did the research and you need to have enough supporting documents and pieces of evidence to have that conclusion. The third principle of your critical analysis is considered as a standardization. So you find enough pieces of evidence, you did the research, you drive a good conclusion out of this. Now you try to standardize. You try to start practicing and see if your arguments are legit enough, if your arguments are strong enough. Arguments are not always clearly stated. I know what I want to say. I am completely clear about that kind of specific premise, but do I say it the way that it is supposed to be said? Do I communicate it properly? Standardization of the argument is absolutely clear. How many times you misunderstood your friends over a simple text message just because of lack of standardization? Standardization, to keep your logic and premises standardized, you need to have the logical order. You need to cluster. Clustering, we learn about this skill. You need to have a centered idea, and then you need to drive other ideas out of that. That is called clustering. An implied conclusion based on the facts and reasons and pieces of evidences that I have, I need to imply and get the good conclusion. After I did that, most of the students miss the last step of the standardization. What is the last step? Missing premises. I have the logical order. I cluster the ideas. I drive proper conclusion out of the premises, pieces of evidence, and supporting ideas that I have. But then I forget about some missing points. Make sure that you have those miscellaneous premises that are missing by assessing and evaluating your own logic in order not to miss any facts or supporting details. Liana, welcome. Hi. Happy New Year. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, Liana? Perfect. Yes. Okay. Thank you and welcome. If you don't see the document that I shared in the chat box, don't worry. I will reshare that right now. And more than welcome to download it and save it on your computer. So in order to have the correct arguments, we're learning about debate. Just recap for the benefit of few students who arrived by delay. So if you just arrived, I think it's a New Year timing, right? New Year timing is 2022, 15 minutes after is considered as still as a welcome and Happy New Year. Sophie, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Excellent. Welcome and Happy New Year. So I'm going to share the document that I just did in the chat box in case if you miss it. We're talking about debates and we're talking about how to be successful in your argument by having proper pieces, premises, correct conclusion, and so on. I am sharing the document in here. I hope you and Liana can download it and save it on your computer. So going back to the principle of the debate analysis or the critical thinking analysis, we need to realize two different steps: deductive argument and non-deductive argument. Deductive arguments are basically classified in two different parts, as I mentioned. Deductive arguments are some pieces of evidence for the reasons that they're guaranteeing the proof of the conclusion. That is deductive. Once again, we have two different types of arguments: deductive arguments and non-deductive arguments. Non-deductive arguments are 100% guaranteed proof of the conclusion, the reasons that you find based on the research that you do. If the premises are true, it is impossible for the conclusion to be false, basically. So those are considered as deductive. Non-deductive arguments specifically are the truth of the premises does not guarantee the truth of the conclusion. That is considered as non-deductive. We're going to have tons of practice on both. You'll get a better sense of that. So in order to have the correct argument in your debate, in your writing, in your verbal argument, in your written argument, you must evaluate what kind of reasons you have that they're deductive, that they're guaranteeing the proof of the conclusion, what kind of pieces of evidence or the reasons that you have that they're not necessarily guaranteeing the truth of the conclusion. If you have the combination of both, perfect. But in that kind of standardization, you need to be aware of these two. Deductive strategies are given as incoherent. When I say incoherent, it means conclusion doesn't follow the premises. I have some kind of reason, but my conclusion is not following my reasons. That's considered one side of the argument, which is fine. One of them is coherent. Coherent means that's valid, but is not following the premises 100%. So conclusion follows the premise, but the premises are not necessarily true. Premises, not to confuse you, specifically for the benefit of the students who arrived by just a few minutes by delay in 2022. I have some reasons. I need to rely on my reasons in order to prove a conclusion. Some reasons are not necessarily true, but I can still prove my conclusion. They are considered as coherent or valid enough. There are some other premises that the conclusions are driven from. Conclusion follows the premises, and the premises are always true for the conclusion. So in the deductive strategies, I need to be incoherent. So if the conclusion doesn't follow the premise, which is fine. If the conclusion is following the premises, but the premise is not necessarily true, which is still coherent or valid, or they go hand in hand and the premise and the conclusion are valid. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast? I don't want to go ahead of myself, and please send me your questions if you in the chat box. Non-deductive strategies, we call it the first step is as inductive reason. Inductive reason is we have specific in order to have a good debate. I'm arguing my opinion. with specific reasons. We're inductive reasoning. Specific examples, information, statistics, they're used to create a generalized conclusion. I'm in the non-deductive strategies, I can have the argument from the analogy. So significant similarities between the things that are different, that are used with the premises to support the conclusion, are considered as the proper analogy. Sometimes I'm arguing my opinion from the cause. A cause is used in an attempt to prove a conclusion. Yes, Sophie, I'm sorry that you're having the electronic problem. Okay, no problem. Go ahead. Do what you need to do and come back. So sometimes I need to argue my opinion based on the cause. So a cause is used in an attempt to prove my conclusion, which is fine, usually an effect. Some of the time in the non-deductive strategies, I need to argue my opinion from the authority, meaning what? I appeal to an expert, I rely on my idea to an expert or authority that are used to support the premises. Because it is the law I am following, that is the argument of authority. I'm arguing my opinion that we must stop behind the traffic light, for example. Even if the traffic light is not working, I must have the full stop when I'm driving. And I'm arguing my opinion. Now I'm arguing from the authority. I say, based on the driving book, I have to stop for like maybe 10 seconds, very much the same as the stopping at the stop sign, in order to keep the driving safe. So I am using the authority to argue my opinion. That is non-deductive strategies. So we have deductive strategies and we have non-deductive strategies in order to have the better argument. So when you read, you do the research, right? When you do your research, you need to analyze your opinion, analyze that the content that you're reading. The content that you're reading is absolutely, should be reliable, absolutely. You identify the argument. What is the argument? I'm going to give you a topic, for example, soon to argue, and I put you in a breakout room. You'll see how it works. You identify the argument. After you identify the argument, you extract the argument. What is going on? What is the issue? And how can I assess the language? And how can I assess the argument? So you identify the problem, you extract the exact problem that you're focusing on, you assess the language, you assess the argument. So the template that I prepared for you, that I'm going to share momentarily with all of you in the chat box, let me know if you don't receive this, or if you have received them, confirm with me. This is the template that I prepared for everybody to be able to make sure that you download it and save it on your computer in order to be able to open it. In the critical analysis, you need to introduce the issue. Within the introduction, you need to have a clear understanding what seems to be the problem. After you did it with your group members, you need to summarize the problem. After you summarize the problem, within your group, you need to try to analyze the issue. In the critical analysis, because we're talking about the debate analysis, right? In the critical states of the analysis, you like or do not like about something. In the content that you're reading, you need to explain your opinion, why you agree or disagree with that specific point of view. So recap, you need to find the issue when you're analyzing. We're not talking about critical analysis. We're talking about the debating argument, how you argue your point of view in writing and how you argue your point of view in the debate or in the communication, in the presentation. Imagine that you're presenting your point of view to your boss soon, and then you need to carry on. So you need to have that clear understanding, the introduction of the issue, then you need to summarize it. When you summarize it, you say, for example, the research was talking about, the issue is about. So clearly you are able to say it in one sentence. In the stage of the summary, when you're talking about specific critical analysis of a specific debate or the issue, you need to be able to word it. You need to be able to phrase it, to clearly say what exactly the issue might be. In the stage of the analysis, you need to be able to focus, and you need to think about the clear, informative. You need to clarify the well-written, if that is interesting written, if the writing is original. You need to think about the appropriate audience. We talked about it before the new year. We talked about the audience, purpose, and the tone. You need to always analyze that. And then in the case of analysis, you need to find the fallacies or biases within the content and the reading that you're performing. Sophie, yes. Sorry about that. I think Carmen is communicating with me. I was just chatting. So in the stage of the analysis, you need to have a well-researched structure. So maybe you read one or two different articles, but make sure that you read more than one article. I would say check the accuracy of your article in order to be able to have a better documentation, in order to have that logical communication and the accurate communication with the premises to your conclusion. The conclusion must be driven based on the information that you have. You need to repeat and restate your thesis in the new words. You need to summarize your main idea if possible. Not all of them, but some of them. You can choose one of them, or you need to include a call of action. Sometimes the students within the argument, they choose two of them. I would suggest to choose two of them, either restate your thesis and summarize, or summarize and include a call of action. If you have three of them to make it stronger, that's fine. It's not going to be very long. Make sure that you do not prolong your argument such. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you a video. And within that video, we're going to go step by step. We are going to learn how, okay, give me a second. Can everybody see the page okay? Can you confirm in the chat box that everybody can see my page? So this critical analysis is more effective in your communication, in writing, and in your debate. What is a good argument? How can you argue your point of view in a positive way? How can you win an argument? This is the session that we're having today. Creating a good argument needs, we talked about the premises and conclusion. Either the premises are deductive or non-deductive, if they're 100% relevant to the conclusion, or somehow they're relevant based on the causes. You need to be aware of collecting different pieces of information. We're going to watch the short video and we're going to learn about how to create good arguments. Take notes.
In conversations with colleagues or scrolls through social media, you find no shortage of statements about what's true or what you should believe. We all make claims, maybe even with evidence to back them up. But are these claims built on a solid foundation with no cracks? And if there are cracks, can you find them?
So in that strategizing the claim, you need to find the gaps or the cracks, as she called it, right? We have reasons to support the argument, but what is wrong with my reasons? Is there any crack in my reasons? Is there anything missing in my reasons? That's how the audience can argue different points of view. If you observe your own claim, if you observe your own premises without any crack, your argument is going to be solid, successful.
A good argument is deliberately constructed from a solid foundation. They aren't built with funny comebacks or louder voices. Solid foundations are built with claims that are supported by reasons that are glued together by evidence. Consider my coworker clients who took different positions on how to deal with their massive growth. Ranjit argued for staying in their current space and instituting a distributed workforce, while Eric argued for moving into a larger space.
So what I want you to do, I want you to take notes and find the cracks within the claim. Once again, listen to two different arguments or the premises and find the cracks if there is any.
Ranjit's claim, it's best to provide a distributed work option. Eric's claim, It's best to keep all the employees together.
So read them both. In claim one of the employees say it's best to provide a distributed work option. They're thinking about work condition, workspace is not good enough for us. One person says it's best to provide a distributed work option. And the second person said it's best to keep all employees working together.
Since these claims are statements that support the argument, they should be arguable. Both Ranjit and Eric's claims were arguable, but if Eric had said, I don't like working from home, or Ranjit had said, I know lots of people who like working from home, these wouldn't have been arguable claims because they don't allow people to disagree.
So you see the subjectivity of the idea? We find the bias somehow.
Personal opinions aren't sturdy building blocks.
So we always avoid he said and she said. We need legit documents. We need good pieces of evidence and arguments.
For a good argument. Reasons follow the word because and provide support for claims. Ranjit argues that keeping the existing space and offering a distributed work option is better because it gives employees more choices.
So he said it's okay to work in the office because some people enjoy working from home. It is okay to have that distribution.
When Ranjit asked Eric why he supported moving into a larger space, Eric's reason was because physical togetherness creates a sense of family that's part of the company's commitment to our employees. But had Eric asked Ranjit why he's afraid of taking a chance on a larger space, that would have been an example of a bad argument tactic, a logical fallacy. Beware of replacing an actual claim with a distorted version of it. Ranjit never claimed he was afraid of taking a chance on a larger space.
Assumptions. This is an assumption. So make sure when you read anything or any piece of document that you collect, there's no assumptions within. My personal opinion is respected, but I don't need to insert that kind of point of view within my writing. My writing should be loaded with pieces of documents and facts and reasons to avoid biases and fallacies, as she commented for logical fallacies.
Had Ranjit argued that Eric is too old to understand what younger employees want, that would have been an example of a bad argument. Another.
You see that? So comparison in order to build up frustration in terms of emotion is somehow not suggested. For example, if we're arguing about better work experience or workspace to work, I don't need to say younger generation and older generation. I need to argue with solid reasoning.
Another fallacy. A good argument requires using good evidence to support reasons.
So it's okay to use because, number one, you need to create good arguments. Imagine you go to a coffee shop to get a good cup of coffee. Your communication turns out to be an argument. So you need to support your own argument. I'd like this specific kind of coffee because. So you can use because, then you can use supporting reasons. It gives me a better, for example, kind of energy I cannot have. So instead of saying like that is bad and that is good, which is black and white, try to have some kind of a gray area to support your reasons.
Ranjit provided data from a study indicating that 87% of employees prefer to choose their work location. Eric provided data from a study that showed that location-based work environments have higher retention and produce more innovative products.
So statistics are good supporting documents if they're accurate.
Assuming both studies were reliable from unbiased sources and using valid samples, this evidence could be considered reliable data. If Eric had offered that everyone he's talked to supports getting a bigger space, that wouldn't have been good evidence. It's tempting to use your own experience as good evidence, but more anecdotal evidence doesn't equal reliable data.
So anecdotes are considered as he said and she said. How can I rely on someone else's opinion if I don't have the actual document? Enough pieces of supporting reasons supporting documents, and you need to have the good reasons for your claim.
When Ranjit offered support for distributed workforces from a professor who teaches optimizing organizational structure, it was an appeal to authority evidence. When Eric countered that a board member preferred making the move to a bigger space, this was weaker evidence. Evidence from someone who is an authority is stronger than evidence from someone who has authority.
So now you realize why it is important to cite some kind of remarks, aside from keeping your document legit and accurate, and to avoid plagiarism and to give the credit to the author of the opinion. Aside from that, it makes your document strong. It makes your debate correct and accurate. So make sure that you can have some true authority citation. So recap: to create a good argument, you need to have the reasons by saying because. You can use different wording as long as you provide the reason for your claim. You can have evidence. You can use evidence to support your reason. You should avoid using anecdotes, as he said and she said, and you can have the proper citation.
Construct good arguments from solid foundations, and you'll communicate conclusions that can be counted on to guide wise decisions.
Okay, so I'm going to pause in here to see if anyone has any questions so far. And then we're going to learn about persuasive argument, how to create persuasive argument. You want to get something, you want to persuade someone to say yes to you. What are you supposed to do? After this, we're going to have a short quiz to somehow review whatever you've learned so far.
A few years ago, I attended a corporate client's launch party. Two leaders, Katrina and Deshawn, were debating about politics. I was surprised, but I was even more surprised that their debate was unusually constructive. They started to attract a crowd. Katrina offered what seemed like compelling research to bolster her claim. Deshawn countered that the sample size was too small to rely on this particular research. Deshawn then asked if Katrina had more reliable evidence to support her claim. Katrina appeared stumped. That's when Deshawn surprised their growing audience. He said, "Kat, I don't take your silence for agreement. I haven't yet provided good reasons to support my claim. Would you be open to me sharing compelling reasons to support my claim and a compelling reason to support yours?"
They're arguing some kind of political ideas, whatever the case may be. Imagine that you're arguing a simple ideas that we're going to argue soon within our class. How can you win an argument in a persuasive way? When she stopped, he even invited her even more, like if we can still work together to give enough reasoning to both sides of the argument, which is fantastic.
Both Deshawn's comment and Katrina's response were quintessential critical thinking communication. Deshawn, she said, "I'd love that, and I'd hate that." The crowd chuckled. She elaborated. We both know the difference between a persuasive good argument and a persuasive bad argument.
The bad argument is not a good discussion and strong, smart discussion. It's just raising voice and the argument doesn't go anywhere. The good argument is based on facts and you get good result out of it. And of course, we all learn from different arguments, right?
Persuade me with a good argument and expect I'll attempt the same. They knew that persuasion.
Okay. Persuade someone or the group with good arguments. And you also persuade the other side of the argument with good reasoning.
Is its own art and science, and that effective communication requires making good arguments persuasively.
So good argument is not just he said, she said, anecdotal, raising voice and nonsense word sharing. It's based on facts and based on reasoning. Effective communication is the base element of anything and anywhere that we go, from a good job to good university to good school that we are at. Persuasive communication and effective communication are both known as essential. We're going to have the quiz. So what I want you to do now, I want everybody to get ready. I open the chat box in here and I want all of you to answer the question. Question number 1 is asking you if you know the meaning of blemishing. You can check your dictionary if you like, that's fine. What is the meaning of blemishing? Using the salicylic acid, acne cream, or pointing out the flaws in the arguments of the people from whom you disagree, stopping before jumping to conclusion, acknowledging a weakness in your own argument before providing a strong reason and support. Okay, I can see some of you guys are choosing. I want everybody to participate. Okay, I can see most of you guys are relying on that one. Excellent, that is the correct answer. Blemishing means you realize the weakness of your own argument and you provide strong reason in your support. That's blemishing. Next question is asking you which statement is true. A good conclusion can follow a bad argument. Good people don't distort argument to make themselves look good. You shouldn't criticize other people's belief. Bad people usually make bad arguments. So it said which statement is true. Bad people usually make bad argument. Okay, I rely on what you say, but that's not strong enough. Read again. So number 4 is not correct. The question is asking you which statement is true. A good conclusion can follow a bad argument. Good people don't distort argument to make themselves look good. Some of you guys are choosing number 2. I would say try as the last step. Try again. Okay, Angela, you shouldn't criticize on people's belief. The only correct answer is a good conclusion can follow a bad argument. That this can be somehow knowing as the non-inclusive. We talked about a non-deductive, right? How do you construct a good argument? We're going to come back to these questions later on. Read the answers. How do you construct a good argument? Number 1, challenge your opponent's right to make an argument that they're not qualified to make. Use strong opinion and ignore non-experts, which is not very strong. So I would say go with process of elimination within the answers. Eliminate the wrong answers. I wouldn't see some of those correct. C, you use reliable evidence and avoid altering your opinion argument to make it easier to make your case, and use as much evidence as you can to find the support. And many of you guys are choosing D as the correct answer. Try again. I would say, Angela, you selected number 3. That was my answer. Very good. In order to construct a good argument, you need to have reliable pieces of evidence. You avoid altering your own opinion argument to make it easier to make sense to other people. You try to document it with the reliable sources. Last question for this quiz would be which statement is false this time. When you construct arguments with opinions, you're not communicating with logic, which is false. Facts and truth are different. Facts differ from person to person. This doesn't make much of a sense, right? Eliminate wrong answers first. Communicating with logic requires clear communication. I need to see your answers. Many of you guys are choosing yes. The question is asking you which statement is false, not which statement is true. Facts different from person to person doesn't make much of a sense. Facts are facts, right? If the earth is round, the earth is round. It doesn't mean that if Maria said the earth is triangular and someone else said the earth is round, is different. Fact is fact. That's correct. Thank you very much, Nowen. Good work. So as asking essential question is the next step in your argument. You're arguing your point of view with someone else. You need to ask question. How can you ask critical questions from the opponent, from the person who is arguing another side of you? This skill is absolutely essential. As I mentioned, it's not only debating skills or the presentation skills, it's just the communication skills. It's a simple communication. If someone is communicating about point of view, I'll make you an example. The other day I went to gym and I had my neighbor who was at the gym 1st of January, my building gym that I attend. And I realized that he had strong opinion about that the schools in pandemic should be open, and the spread of pandemic is nothing to do with the schools, and we should live the life easily without being worried about spreading the virus, and the school shouldn't be closed, nowhere should be closed. That was his argument. It was very interesting that I was asking him question that ended up having a great communication and argument, and he liked it. He liked the discussion because I was just simply asking question like the spread of the COVID, how it could be. So asking question, going back to the topic, asking essential question, asking key questions when you're having an argument with someone is absolutely important. Take notes. How can you ask critical question? Because after the breakdown, when we come back, we're going to have a good debate about an interesting topic. I put you in a breakout room. I join you within the argument, and you need to argue your point of view. Take notes, please. How can you ask critical question in the good debate?
It's one thing to know the essential critical thinking questions to ask. It's another thing to actually ask them. Critical thinking often gets to the heart of people's beliefs. So asking critical thinking essential questions can be delicate.
You don't want to attack the person. You don't want to offend the person. It's a delicate tactic and a technique, of course.
But if you're committed to discovering what's true and making the best decisions, you have to ask. Let's dive in to the essential questions for pursuing critical thinking objectives and how to ask them.
Are you taking notes? Everybody's okay? Excellent. I want everybody to take notes. I want everybody to ask questions. If you don't understand, take notes.
At Applied Curiosity Lab, our framework for remembering essential critical thinking questions is PICK-PACK. PICK-PACK stands for purpose,
Information, questions, perspective, assumption, concepts, and conclusion. Pick-pack is an easier way to know. This is a technique in an argument, and you should follow through. Pay attention to details.
Information, questions, perspectives, assumptions, concepts, and conclusions. Purpose questions clarify goals. What are we trying to accomplish? What other goals could we consider?
So you pay attention to WH questions. It is very important to have open-ending question, not yes/no question. Yes/no question, it closes the question. Do you like hamburger? Yes or no? But open-ending question will help the opponent of the argument to elaborate, to clarify the goals. WH questions only.
Information questions give us background on how we come to believe what we believe.
For example, when my neighbor said that they should keep everything open and we should live the life normally up until the moment that the virus disappears and perishes from the face of this planet, miraculously, I asked him, like, interesting belief. How did you come up with that kind of idea? WH questions.
You might soften information questions by saying, this is interesting, or out of curiosity, before asking, on what information are you basing that comment?
That is the key. You might laugh. That is the key, because people love to be heard. People love to be listened to. When you ask them, when you tell them, like, that's very interesting point of view that I've never heard of it, but how do you think, or how did you come up with that kind of belief? That's what I asked my neighbor. The good argument that I had with him. Very interesting argument.
What information might be out there that we haven't considered? Questions help us understand the quality of our questions and how we might ask better ones.
So if your opponent asking you a question, you can question the question. When you question the question, you make both sides of the argument or the opponents to think deeper than the way that they do.
What could we learn if we frame the question another way? Or what could we learn if we asked a different question? Perspective questions reveal the point of view or frame of reference that ideas or thoughts come from. From what point of view are you considering this? Is there another perspective we could consider? Assumption questions show us what we take for granted. Assumptions are particularly delicate, so it's best to start with questioning your own out loud. What am I assuming that might be wrong? Then you can ask, what are you assuming? And why do you assume that? And under what condition might that assumption be wrong?
So it's very important we talked about the strategizing, right? It is very important to evaluate your own claims and see what kind of premises you might have those cracks on.
Concept questions clarify what you're all talking about. Think about concepts like success or equality, diversity, innovation, and even growth.
So people have their own opinion, right? So my concept of defining one thing and then defining something else, maybe is completely different than the other person.
A lot of times, we're not even all talking about the same thing. If we don't take the time to ask concept questions, we don't have the clarity necessary for critical thinking communication.
So when you're asking question at that stage of the argument, pick back. You need to be aware of that, okay?
Here you can ask, are we all agreeing on the same meaning of this concept? How might this label or word be confusing?
So we talked about I gave you a template and I send it to you once again in the chat box when you're having an argument about the topic that I give you after the break time. It is very important to come to an understanding of in the introductory stage. You need to say, okay, I understand the argument. Does everybody agree that this is the argument? So always checkpoint with one another to see, okay, I understand this topic. Everybody is arguing about the same topic. Then you understand before you carry on with the analysis.
What's a different interpretation of this concept? Conclusion questions help us make sure we understand the reasons for why we believe what we believe. Start with asking, have I provided good reasons for my conclusion?
Ask yourself before asking your opponent.
Then you can ask, can you explain your reasoning? Or is there a different plausible conclusion?
Because at times you think that you're clear, but the other party didn't understand. The moment that you ask, did I provide enough or have I provided enough reasoning that is clear? If the person says yes, you can carry on and say, okay, so what are your reasons? If the other person says, well, I'm still not clear, you can just elaborate in a better way.
Using the pick-pack framework provides an agreed upon way to ask the essential critical thinking questions without having to walk on eggshells.
Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to
like success or you assume.
I'm going to rewind it somehow to have that.
What point of view
to have that pick pack, and what I want you to do.
Take for granted.
Sorry,
assumptions are particular.
Because we're almost done with the pick pack. What I want you to do, I want you to take a picture of a pick pack, because after the break time, you're gonna use this pick pack. So is everybody ready? So pick pack is purpose, information, question. So different types of question: purpose question, information question, question, perspective question, assumption question, concept and conclusion. Any topic that you're arguing, you'd better have these kind of questions up. What we're going to learn before I give you the break time is how to navigate critical thinking in groups. After the break time, I'm going to put you in different breakout rooms, and how can you elaborate and elicit different ideas from different friends.
On January 28, 1986, Americans gathered around their televisions to watch the Space Shuttle Challenger blast off. I remember being excited because one of the 7 crew members was a teacher and mom who was part of NASA's Teacher in Space program. I also remember watching shocked and with sadness when 73 seconds after takeoff, the Challenger exploded, killing the entire crew. There are many potentially catastrophic elements of a space shuttle launch, but the ultimate culprit was an O-ring. O-rings are sensitive to temperature. Challenger's O-ring had been tested to 53 degrees. It's usually warm in Cape Canaveral, Florida, but the day of the Challenger's launch, it was a chilly 36 degrees. Why did it happen? After a massive investigation, the bigger question turned out to be, why did they take off? There are many reasons for disasters. In the case of the Challenger disaster, groupthink was the major reason. In the months leading up to the Challenger disaster, it was clear that NASA needed good publicity. They needed a win, and there were a lot of internal and external factors at play. They had always overcome technical challenges in the past, even problems with O-rings. The mission had already experienced major delays. Astronaut teacher Krista McAuliffe planned to broadcast a live lesson from orbit when the students were in school. President Reagan was going to celebrate the launch in his address. NASA felt massive pressure to follow through with the group's decision to launch, despite known technical challenges. There are important strategies to prevent groupthink from stifling critical thinking communication.
And the most important thing that happened, or the most often thing that happened, is disagreement, right? People disagree with one another. We're going to learn how to avoid disagreement, or how to resolve disagreement, deal with the disagreement before the breakdown.
The Challenger disaster is a reminder that groups of people, even cohesive groups of super smart people, can make bad, high-stakes decisions when members choose harmony, consensus, and authority over critical thinking communication.
Because it was the law and it was supposed to do through NASA, everybody trusted that because that was the authority without even questioning it, right?
When making important group decisions, bring in an assumption buster, someone who will challenge consensus.
So maybe someone says, okay, what if something happened? We're brainstorming within the group, right? So assumptions, you assume the thing. Don't worry and don't afraid of expressing your opinion.
An ideal assumption buster is a natural skeptic who tends to question or doubt groupthink, not a cynic who's habitually negative. Also, an assumption buster can't be penalized for disagreeing or for challenging consensus or authority. Research strongly suggests that when we talk about issues only with people we agree with, we become even more extreme, even more risky in our views. This group polarization is caused by group dynamics, not better reasons.
So it is very important to have that dynamic within your group.
Encourage the assumption buster to challenge you to prove your case.
Not arguing, but arguing with the reasoning.
And then swap roles. 5 rocket engineer contractors tried to stop the 1986 Challenger launch. NASA responded by requiring the contractor to prove that it was not safe to launch, rather than offering evidence to prove, in light of the engineer's evidence, that it was safe. Collect opinions independently and anonymously.
So for example, when you're debating your opinion about the topic that I'm going to give you after the break to discuss, you don't need to mention your name and so on. You need to express your opinion openly and then challenge the opinion.
Groups can yield powerful sway over people who might privately disagree and possess unexplored insights.
With the documentation, that is important.
When dealing with delays or long decision processes, watch out for group decision fatigue. With decision fatigue, groups who can't come to consensus get tired, give up, and develop a whatever frame of mind. Decision fatigue can also cause teams to stay in go mode. The rocket engineers initially told NASA they wouldn't approve the Challenger launch that day. It was too cold for the O-rings, but they were outside contractors and dismissed.
So the engineer said it is dangerous, do not launch. But NASA didn't listen because they say they're contractors. They didn't rely on their opinions.
NASA's response: when do you want us to launch? Next April? When data runs counter to politics and pressure, speak out with persuasive good arguments.
So if you think your argument is important to be heard, stand behind your own argument.
And make it clear that you will prioritize reliable, relevant data.
Because it's not a simple decision. At times, millions and $1 million are involved, right?
Despite hours of argument and reams of data, the NASA contractor finally relented and agreed to support the launch.
So I think that now at this stage, what I want you to do, everybody to do, is I want everybody to, hold on a second. I want everybody to take a break at this time, come back at 5:15, and we're going to continue with how to deal with disagreement. Enjoy your break. I'll see you at 5:15.